At the beginning of the session, you mentioned that the idea for the book came out of the King Tides Project International. So perhaps could you tell us a little bit about what the King Tides Project International is and how it came about?
Yeah. So I think it was 2009. I'm fairly certain. 2009. I had been working for NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, for a couple of years, and I was running this program that was supposed to get agency science from the big US agencies into the hands of local coastal decision makers. And so me and some colleagues around climate change and how to make decisions around climate change. So my colleagues and I thought, okay, great, we need to get like senior managers at like land and municipal agencies on board. So this is like a condensation of 5 years of my life here. So we thought, okay, great. So we set up a whole bunch of trainings and workshops and technical assistance all about, local climate impacts. And then after about like 6 months or a year of really sustained contact, these managers, director level managers at these agencies, local agencies, were like, yes, this is a super important topic. I'm totally on board. We need to be doing planning around this, but you know what? I'm not the decision maker here. It's actually my staff, because they're going to be the ones who are, writing the ordinances and the building codes and the, long range plans. So you got to talk to them, because we got to get this stuff into the plans. So my colleagues and I were like, okay, great. And so we trotted out there and did another, 8 months, year of sort of sustained technical assistance. And at that point, all of these, planner level folks were like, yep, this is extremely important. We need to be doing this, but I am not the decision maker here. I just write the plans, but it's actually like our elected officials who are going to say whether or not that plan is implemented. So we thought, okay. So we went out there again and like by a miracle got all the electeds, trained up on the issue. And they were like, yes, this is absolutely totally critical, but I'm not the decision maker here. It's actually the public. It's my constituents, because I just do what they say. And so for me, I was like, wow, that was rather circular. And so it really taught me how important the public is, especially in matters of like local climate change planning. And so around this time that I was coming to that realization, this Australian meteorologist named Phil Watson was like, well, we know when the highest high tides of the year are going to be. So why don't we use that as a preview of sea level rise? It won't be perfect, but it'll get people a good sense of like, what things will look like down the road. And so we thought, oh, that's a really good idea. Yeah, we can, instead of like, so at that time, a lot of the media coverage was around like polar bears and places really far away, or it was really science heavy and no one understood. And so the idea that we could like stop talking about polar bears and ice caps and start just telling people, just go out and look at what's happening in your own community. That was kind of how it came about. And I think I actually have, I think I was probably supposed to, I have slides that would have conveyed that probably better than my hand gesticulations. So let me see if I can pull up my slides. And let's see. Maybe I can maybe just kind of like show and talk through them as we talk.
Yeah, maybe I saw that. Yeah, there's some very, I think, impactful photographs there, so it can form the background, so people get an idea for what the citizens are collecting.
Yeah, this is my hometown. Sorry, yes.
Yeah, no, so I think, yeah, we can thank you for giving the background to that. So is there a formal membership in this project or in this organization? And how do you maintain people active and engage the members or the contributors to the King Tide project?
That's a great question. And it's totally changed over time. We had, see, there are the polar bears. So in the beginning, I'll just come back here. In the beginning, it's really dependent on funding, actually, which will probably not come as a surprise to this group. So when there has been funding from a part of the network, it's often been whoever has that funding who can do a lot of the coordination and the management of it. So when we first started this project, it was Australia. The first year it was Australia, Washington, Oregon, California, and British Columbia. And I think me in California, I had time and funding to be able to do a lot of the sort of network coordination, and so did British Columbia. After a while, that waned and a whole bunch of new folks came on, and some of them took over some of the organization. And so it's been actually quite organic. Most of the folks who've had the time and the money to do that coordination of the network were coming from government agencies. It's very rarely been that there was enough time from an NGO, from that kind of partner. I'm going to see if I wonder, actually, I know that we're limited on time, so I certainly don't need to, that's also, yeah, near where I live. I do not need to flip through these. I can also share this deck with folks just to kind of give you a sense of what's in here. And then, sorry, Ned, I think I may have interrupted you as you were about to ask me something.
We hope to share the slides and the presentations from everyone if we get permissions afterwards, so people can obviously check these out on the site. And another question, you spoke a little about coordination and management there, but is there a formal management and coordination structure for the King Tides project?
Oh yeah, sorry. So there have been, no, there's never been a formal management structure. The first couple of years, like I mentioned, I was me and our British Columbia person were sort of leading the management of it. We did a lot of pretty informal work through I mean, like a Google group and shared documents through there. We have meetings before the King Tide season, which is usually in the winter, to sort of just everyone understand what each other is doing. And then we share a lot of resources through Google groups and mail.
Okay. And what do you think is the societal impact you think that the network has achieved so far?
I think the term King Tides was something that was used in Australia, and that has now broadened, and there's a lot of people outside of Australia who use that term. It's really known in the media. It's really known by a lot of just regular people who live in coastal communities. And I think that we actually, that's great that I got here. I feel like this is one of the things that's happened, is that it's helped to improve the local science and policy, because this network of hundreds and thousands of photographers has been out gathering hyper local data about flood risk for over a decade now, right? So they have been able to track changes over time so far, and also do validation. This top image here is from something called the Our Coast, Our Future project in California, which is a local sea level rise planning tool, which I was a part of building. And we had the downscaled climate models. And of course, all models are wrong, right? And we didn't know where that model was going to be wrong. So we actually had we looked at where we thought we might need better data, and then we had our photographers go out and get that data during a king tide, and then we had that compared. We did a hindcast between the king tide of the year and then a storm surge that had happened previously, and then against what that model was predicting. So we were really able to make, like a better product for local communities. It has also been super fun. There have been a lot of like artistic projects developed around it. Here in the bottom, this woman did a King Tides dance in I think this is like Great Bay. She did a performance for an entire tidal cycle. And just so much creativity like that, that's really helped get the word out about sea level rise. And it's also been super fun to engage like everyday citizens in science collection. I feel like science is often walled off from people. And so this has been a way to really get them engaged. And we've also been able to produce a lot of content for students. So formal and informal education, which has been really great. To be able to, like engage young people.
Yeah. So just to understand the process, can anybody go out there and take photographs and material related to king tides, upload them somehow, and then how do you ensure that that information does end up with the decision makers? What's the kind of the chain?
Yeah, we have always had a lot of engagement from local planning agencies. So the organizers have always been, it's often like a coastal management agency, and then in partnership with a local planning organization. And then I think in like year 5 or 6, maybe, we developed a lot of academic like courseware for high school AP environmental science students and 101 college students. And it had a whole protocol, a whole data collection protocol for both capturing the images themselves. And then also we had some surveys that were done. And so teachers could sort of slot this into their classroom. Students would go out and take pictures and then would be able to examine that data themselves. And then my favorite was when they brought it back to local planning agencies, sort of, like that youth voice of saying, this is what I'm seeing in my community. This is what I'm thinking. I know you have a lot of decision-making authority about what happens next. So for me, that was like a really great connection with that story I told earlier about all that work that was being done, where everyone kept saying, I'm not the decision maker, I'm not the decision maker. To the point where we realized, okay, well, fine. If the citizen, if the just average person is going to be that decision maker, how do we actually get them into that process, the more formalized decision-making process? And so that has been through, like I said, education resources, protocols. We partner with a lot of science museums, like in San Francisco, it's the California Academy of Sciences and the Exploratorium, so 2 of our big museums that do annual events now, where they bring people out, they do interpretive walks, and they do data collection.
Okay, nice. And just kind of to bring it back to ICAN, the International Coastal Atlas Network, who are organizing the meeting today, would you have any kind of very succinct advice in terms of ensuring relevance of our activities towards our members and also the wider public?
I think if I were to have something succinct, it would probably be to like, I always love a good stakeholder map, right? Like map out who your stakeholders are and keep including them in different ways, right? So I think like the private sector right now has a lot of funding and technology infrastructure available to help networks like ICAN, right? Like there's the funding piece. And then there are the management agencies who are often responsible for like getting stuff done. And those can be everything from like municipal planning agencies to Fish and Wildlife Service, right? And then there's that broader public of who is going to be often contributing information to these networks or spreading the word themselves to their friends and family and their own networks. So really looking at what are each of the nodes of like engagement that you have across that network. What are their incentives for engaging with you, and how do you actually meet their needs and address their incentives? And so I'm not sure if for you that would be, what we did around educational resources or making sure that maps and data could be fed into existing technology infrastructure. But that's probably what I would say is cast a really wide net on who your stakeholders are, and then methodically think through the ways that you need to engage them.
Okay, great. We're kind of running out of time here, but I'd just like to take one question that came in from Jeff Herter. He asks, did the network or the team consider using augmented reality to convey the same sense of empathy as what this effort is trying to engender around the issue? So that's a big question.
Oh my God, it feels like a ringer of a question for me. My day job right now is working for a company called Unity Technologies, which does a lot of AR and VR applications. And so we are starting to look at that. There have been a couple of projects in California where people get in VR headsets and are looking at water levels of 2050 and beyond. And I think it's really cool. And I think that there's a lot that hasn't been done yet. So I see a huge opportunity there. And I know that we're out of time. So if you want to nerd out with me on that, like, please do so. My contact information is probably here somewhere. And I would love to talk about that.
Great. Thank you very much, Marina. And thank you for all the great answers to our questions, to mine and David. And I think that the big message coming through from me is the importance of informing and reaching out to the public, and that it's not just a one-way situation. That the Atlas, I think, definitely is presenting fascinating and beautiful information to people. So it's not just that it always has to be technical. I think it needs to react to our emotions as well, and those other less tangible aspects. And I think your Atlas does that beautifully. And then I think in the second part with the King Tides Network, what was great there is that, again, we can't leave all these really important questions just to so-called experts, that the public has to get involved too and has to push and to really kind of, I suppose, shake it up so that they are also contributing to the decisions made. But I think what was nice as well is that your decision makers actually said, we are, if you like, the servants to the public, and that doesn't necessarily happen everywhere. So I think you had very open-minded decision makers. But I think this way of getting the public more involved in this is certainly one message that came through very strongly. And I think we'll see that also a little bit later in some of the presentations. So Marina, you can stretch your legs or grab a glass of water, and thank you very much. But we hope you stay around as well for the panel discussion, which is just going to come up right now. So thanks, Marina.
Yeah, thank you. I am definitely sticking around. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be here today.